QTV News coming to you live from our studios on Caraba Avenue. I am Jenna Bosonko. Thanks for joining us. Here are the main news headlines. According to World Bank's Poverty and Gender Assessment Report, the Gambia's poverty rate has climbed to 53%, largely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Addressing world leaders at COP27 in Egypt, Gambia's Vice President Badara Ejuf has said that the Gambia is on track to achieve SDG 13 on climate action. The Independent Electoral Commission IEC held a briefing and discussions with stakeholders including party members on about preparations for the local government elections scheduled for April next year. In the wake of the increasing security challenges confronting Africa, the 17th Africa Security Watch Conference opened on Wednesday on the theme Post-COVID-19 Sustaining Security in Africa. And in sports news, the Gambia Football Federation launched the FIFA Talent Development Scheme project on Wednesday to identify and develop talented footballers. Those were the main headlines, and now the news in detail. Do stay with us. Thank you for joining us. If you're just tuning in, you're watching QTV News, and I am Jenna Bosonko. Now, according to the World Bank's Poverty and Gender Assessment Report, the Gambia's poverty rate has climbed to 53%, largely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The report was launched on Wednesday by Sidi Keita, the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs. Suleiman Dabo tells us more.
The most striking statistics for this World Bank report is 53%. It means more than half the population of the Gambia are considered poor. And this huge number is spread unevenly across the country and disproportionately between men and women. Nathan Belete, the World Bank Country Director, explains.
Poverty rates remain a largely rural phenomenon. 7 out of every 10 rural dwellers are considered poor, compared to 3 out of every 10 urban dwellers. However, the large share of the poor people continue to live in urban areas, in the Brikama local government area in particular, raising concerns about urban poverty.
It is not all bleak, at least not in the view of the World Bank Country Director. He remains hopeful that with appropriate collaboration, especially with those he refers to as social protection groups, this disproportionate spread of poverty can be addressed.
Ensuring a more rapid, resilient, and inclusive recovery will require concerted efforts to address the many structural challenges facing the Gambia. These include limited wage jobs in the labor market, limited economic opportunities, especially for the youth and women, needed improvements in the quality of education, and increasing productivity in the agriculture sector.
Sidi Keita, the Minister of Finance, addressed the impact of poverty, particularly on women.
As a result, poverty and gender issues in development can no longer be treated as a periphery matter. And to ensure that government policy address the basic tenets of resilience, inclusiveness, the data and policy reports such as this publication will be critical to mainstreaming gender-related issues in our national policy discourse. Whilst existing data already has suggested that women and girls are more affected by the ravaging impact of the pandemic, more granular data will be needed to support gender-based policies in combating poverty and enhance resilience and inclusion of women and girls in the wagon of economic prosperity.
The coronavirus pandemic has largely been blamed for the increase in poverty in the Gambia. According to the World Bank experts, poverty was on a steady decline from 2015. When the pandemic struck, that trend began to reverse upwards and is thus responsible for the startling figure of 53% or 1.1 million people living in poverty in the Gambia. The report contains detailed, valuable data that can be used by government to plan policies to address poverty. It also contains information useful for the media to accurately report on the incidence and impact of poverty on individuals and communities. Suleiman Dabo for QTV News.
Unfortunate statistics there. And moving on, addressing world leaders at COP27 in Egypt, Gambia's Vice President Badara Ejuf has said that the Gambia is on track to achieve SDG 13 on climate action. Lena E. Igwenyiba has more.
The COP27 comes in a year of new weather extremes, food shortages, fuel price hikes, and a rising cost of living, with Russia's fossil fuel-financed war on Ukraine further stoking the crisis. So far this year, Africa has seen floods and storms kill hundreds of people across the south, triggering electricity shortages, disrupting freight operations, and devastating homes and livelihoods. Meanwhile, drought has caused famine for millions of people in the Horn of Africa. Badara Ejuf, Vice President of the Gambia, says the Gambia is on the path to combating climate change.
Gambia is on track to meet SDG 13 on climate action. Our NDC2 was acknowledged to be ambitious and in compliance with Article 4, Paragraph 6 and 19 of the Paris Agreement. The Gambia has also submitted its strategy for becoming climate neutral by 2050.
VP Juve speaks on steps his government is taking to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 13.
To support the unconditional targets of our NDCs, the Gambia government has increased allocation in its national budgets and also working with private sector and development partners such as the World Bank, the EU and others to address climate change, both in the areas of adaptation, resilience, mitigation, and renewable energy. By 2025, the Gambia will have more than 30 MV solar plants to reduce the cost of buying and using fossil fuel.
This year, the Gambia experienced its highest rainfall in 38 years, thus resulting in massive flooding in many parts of the country. Vice President Badara states the need for financial commitments to find solutions to climate predicament.
The Gambia, being a small and low-lying country, bisected by the River Gambia, our greatest risk is the sea level rise, posing potentially a great existential risk, particularly to the capital Banjul, which is below sea level. This year's floods and the windstorms of last year caused enormous destruction to life and livelihood and property, putting much pressure on our meager national budgets and also on achieving the SDGs. Pledges of financial support alone are not sufficient. We need practical financial commitments, easily accessible without much procedural difficulties and challenges.
COP27 is also taking place against the backdrop of inadequate ambition to curb greenhouse gas emissions. According to the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, CO2 emissions need to be cut 45% by 2030, compared to 2010 levels to meet the Central Paris Agreement goal of limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. This is crucial to avoid the worst impacts of climate change, including more frequent and severe droughts, heat waves and rainfall. Reporting for QTV News, I am Lena E. Igwenyiba.
Accessible financial support. It's good to know Gambia is on track to achieve SDG 13. Now from that, the Independent Electoral Commission, IEC, held a briefing and discussions with stakeholders, including political party members, on Wednesday about preparations for the local government elections scheduled for April next year. Ajibinto Drame has more.
The local government election is set for 15th April 2023. And 19 political parties are currently registered to contest. The occasion provided an opportunity for party members to discuss and suggest possible changes to the election scheduled to ensure the smooth running of the electoral process. Aliu Momorinjai is the chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission.
The IEC is currently implementing the activities of the election cycle of 2021 to 2023. The conduct of local government elections is key amongst these electoral activities. The local government elections are slated for the 15th April 2023 and 20th May 2023. Elections for councillors for the 120 wards will be held on 15 April 2023. And that of chairpersons mayors in the 8 local government areas will be held on 20th May 2023. The Commission has decided to fix different dates for these sets of elections, considering legal requirements. The conduct of local government elections are prescribed to be held 12 months after National Assembly elections. Furthermore, such decisions is also informed by vital mitigating factors such as logistics, transparency, and integrity of the process. The need for proper management of these factors cannot be understated.
Hadisida Job George, the newly appointed and only female commissioner at the IEC, will oversee women's affairs in relation to the elections and is tasked with ensuring a free and fair election process. She calls for more women's participation in the local government election.
I look forward to closely working with stakeholders to further the implementation of wholly democratic electronic process. Together we can do it, and we will meet objectives of a free, fair, transparent election by God's grace.
The People's Alliance Party, PAP, a newly registered political party, is among the parties that will contest the election. Capacity building training for CSOs, the media and political parties is scheduled for February 2023. The IEC seeks to orientate stakeholders with rules and regulations of the IEC ahead of the election. The IEC will issue nomination forms for councillors from 15th of February 2023. Nomination of candidates will be held from the 14th to 27th March, while 31st of March to 7th April is set for replacement of voter cards. 15th of April is election day. Among other matters discussed, party members suggested decentralization of training and devolving it to the regions, and for an extension of the timing for replacing voter cards to give people the opportunity to exercise their rights. The suggestion we are not taking up and the dates for replacing voter cards remains the same. Ajibintu Drame, QTV News.
From that story by Ajibintu Drame, we will now go for a short commercial break. And when we come back, we have some more local news stories for you as well as sports. Do stay tuned.
Cedric and Caroline came in to choose tiles for their brand new kitchen. Brown or beige? Brown. And why not a new mixture tap? A new sink too? Fine, a new sink too. And what about a lighting fixture? Shall we go for this one? See, you're finally on the same page.
I also wanted a new kitchen counter.
We got you, Caroline.
And yes, that's Batimat's Bati Days. Take advantage of exceptional discounts up to 60% on several product families. From November 5th to 19th, you will.
Ken du ko jeex liko waral moy QTV ak Marketplace dañoo tàmm di won réew mi li nga xamantene moy quality fashion tegu ci temps xew ci jamono neex xool lool ma tàmm ci Marketplace day jël caméramanam dugg ci biir réew mi seet li nga xamantene sunuy xale yi réew dañu ko bëgg ndax ñoom dañoo coquette lool seet li gën te gën a gën ñu indil leen ko fii ci biir QTV ngeen di ko seetaan ci àddina wërngal këpp man namatuma flight jam de li ko waral mooy lépp lu ma daan wuti bitim réew mu ngi fii ci biir réew mi waaye da nga koo bëgg a gis da nga koo bëgg a xam da nga naan jàkk Marketplace dafa fas yéene ñëwaat 2022 bii ànd ak QTV nee nañ kee ngay daxee boo ko mënu la jot li ci sa loxo nga koy sànni moo waral QTV bëgg a sànni seeni programme seeni product yéen telo yi yéen designers yi ci biir Marketplace boo sànnee day dal de bëgg ngaa sànni da nga jël seeni nomba nga jokkoo ak ñoom ñu fekk si la ci sa diiwaan wane la lu coquette li nga am pour réew mi 324 4444 ak Marketplace dama ciy toogee nu ma neexee ndax lépp lu ma fay gis day tëgg sa bëm.
Welcome back from that short commercial break. If you're just tuning in, you're watching QTV News, and I am Jenna Bosonko. Now, in the wake of the increasing security challenges confronting Africa, the 17th Africa Security Watch Conference opened on Wednesday in the Gambia, during which security personnel and experts started discussing possible lasting solutions. As Alusise reports, the theme of the meeting is post-COVID-19 sustaining security in Africa.
Participants are using the event to dissect the security challenges confronting Africa. CDM Toure, Director General, the Gambia Immigration Department, who gave a presentation on the effects of migration, described migration as a crucial part of human existence, which encompasses the movement of people, including refugees. In Africa, it is mainly characterized by cross-border movement due to economic and social reasons. According to Toure, there have been joint efforts to address illegal or irregular migration, particularly in the Gambia.
At national level, the Gambia Immigration Department, with the support of the Geneva Center for Security Sector Governance, otherwise known as DCAF, is currently developing a new immigration bill that is fit for purpose in addressing contemporary migration challenges as they relate to national security.
While there are challenges relating to migration, equally there exist opportunities which, due to the beliefs, if properly harnessed, can contribute to socio-economic development of countries. The Gambia Immigration Boss said the Gambia remains committed to its primary duty to protect the human rights of migrants. He advocates the need to ensure proper and effective management of migration and the border system to ensure peace and security against organized crime. To this, he said the Gambia is upgrading security measures at different entry points to detect and deter illegal migrants. Speaking to QTV, Major General Victor Okwodili Ozugwo, Commander of Infantry Corps Center, Nigeria Army, emphasized the important role civilians can play toward complementing the work of the security services.
The civilians, first and foremost, will identify the issue of good governance. If it is political, we need them to govern very well. Then the populace, they need to support the military by giving us information, actionable information and intelligence about the adversary. They need to turn their back from the adversary. They don't need to support them.
Professor Henry Fish, Chairman, Conference Faculty, Security Watch Africa Initiatives, and retired Lieutenant General Lamidi Adusun, former Chief of Policy and Planning with the Nigerian Army and former Commander of the Multinational Joint Task Force, said little will be achieved in the absence of cooperation and action.
We're looking at the fact that we're dealing with transnational crime, which is not an issue for one particular country. We have to work together. We have to have integrated strategies, and we need the cooperation, which we talk about quite glibly, but what we need to do is to go over to actionable solutions.
Is brothers and sisters, fathers and children fighting against themselves, taking arms against each other because of so many reasons, issues of development, issues of good governance, issues of education, issues of religion, issues of economy. But these are things that happen in the process of development.
Many attending the convergence share the views that good governance is primary to addressing security threats and challenges, and therefore call for effective implementation of protocols on good governance. They also recommend having a proper framework of cooperation against extremism, insurgents, and migration. The conference will issue a communique to be shared with governments and development partners. The conference wraps up on Friday with an awards night to be attended by President Barrow. Among the award recipients is CDM Toure, Director General of the Gambia Immigration Department. Reporting for QTV News, I am Alusise.
From that, in a bid to enhance efficient tax administration, the GRA, in partnership with the United Nations Department for Social and Economic Affairs and the West Africa Tax Administration Forum, organized a capacity-building training for its staff on the fundamental principles of transfer pricing. Mohamed Lamin Choi has more.
Effective tax administration is fundamental for a country like the Gambia, whose economy is tax-based. And the Gambia Revenue Authority is mandated to administer taxes on goods, people and services. In an open global economy, tax administration has become more complex, requiring greater knowledge and expertise. This is what informed the organizing of this capacity building training on principles of transfer pricing. Babatunde Oladadbo is the executive director of the West Africa Tax Administration Forum.
So there are issues of trade misinvoicing, mispricing, like Company A setting up business and then creating another entity to sell products to the same company. And when they are doing the account, it's usually the high cost there. So you need to have a specialized skill to be able to track this. And in Gambia, we discovered that knowledge it's not the way it should be. And then most importantly, the regulations for the practice of transfer pricing is not actually in the Gambia. So what we are doing is setting the tone for a country intervention that will enable the Gambia Revenue Authority to up its game in terms of transfer pricing.
Transfer pricing is the amount charged between associated enterprises for the purchase of goods, services, or intangible property. This is important for tax purposes as the pricing agreed between associated enterprises will have an impact on the amount of taxable profits each enterprise generates. At the GRA's request, this capacity building training is organized to prepare its staff to track financial transactions for tax administration. Yankuba Dabo is the GRA's Commissioner General and he has been re-elected as the chairman of the West Africa Tax Administration Forum.
Because the world is going at a level where the private sector is always prepared for us. So unless we get a very good training, we got a very good professional training on the field that we are doing, we will not be able to challenge them. And it's important that we at the level of management of GRA, we always want our staffs to develop the capacity of our staffs.
This training is jointly organized by the United Nations Department for Social and Economic Affairs, the West Africa Tax Administration Forum, and the Gambia Revenue Authority. Emily Moya is the Chief of Capacity Building at the United Nations Department for Economic and Social Affairs.
So we hope that this training will be beneficial to you all. I know that transfer pricing continues to be a key and critical area for developing countries especially, but also for countries globally. So this training will help us to really get to understand what the considerations should be.
Revenue leakages in the Gambia's tax base can cost substantial economic and financial losses. By building the capacity of its staff, expanding and widening the tax base of the economy, the Gambia Revenue Authority could potentially significantly improve the economy for national development. Mahmoud Lamin Choi, QTV News.
From that story by Mahmoud Lamin Choi, let's now take a look at what is happening in the world of sports. Now, the Gambia Football Federation launched the FIFA Talent Development Scheme project on Wednesday to identify and develop talented footballers to become elite footballers. Our sports reporter Mamadou Gajaga attended the event at the Football House and passed in this report.
The FIFA Talent Development Scheme is expected to help member associations like the Gambia Football Federation achieve their full potential and continue with measures to reduce the disparity in the level of football between different regions of the world. The motto of the project is Give Every Talent a Chance. Dominic Nyonzima, FIFA Regional Technical Consultant, explains.
When we are talking about elite, it's when we are talking about academies, okay, youth national team, because a player who's already in a national team is not amateur anymore, is among the elite. In fact, the aim of the project at the start, Gianni Infantino says he wants to reduce the gap in between the so developed countries and those who are still down. And the best way to go for this is to insist on the elite, the academies and the national team.
The Gambia is among the first 7 countries to benefit from this FIFA Talent Development Scheme, according to FIFA Regional Technical Consultant. Lamin Kababajo, President of the Gambia Football Federation, says they prioritize talent development and capacity building as part of the football development process.
So we will not relent in our efforts to ensure that we build the capacity of people running football and also identify through the technical department and its satellite institutions or bodies to identify talents across the length and breadth of the country as young as they may be, not only to identify them but to help develop their talents, and also to nurture them and jealously guide them so that they can achieve their potential.
There are thousands of young talented footballers in the Gambia. Less than 1% become elite players to play at the professional level and national teams. This FIFA project hopes to give more footballers the opportunity to play at elite level through talent identification. Mamadou Gajaga, QTV News.
Brilliant initiative there. Now from that, let's recap our main headlines before we leave. According to the World Bank's Poverty and Gender Assessment Report, the Gambia's poverty rate has climbed to 53%, largely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Addressing world leaders at COP27 in Egypt, Gambia's Vice President Badara Ejuf has said that the Gambia is on track to achieve SDG 13 on climate action. The Independent Electoral Commission IEC held a briefing and discussions with stakeholders, including party members, on about preparations for the local government elections scheduled for April next year. In the wake of the increasing security challenges confronting Africa, the 17th Africa Security Watch Conference opened on Wednesday on the theme Post-COVID-19 Securing Security in Africa. And in sports news, the Gambia Football Federation launched the FIFA Talent Development Scheme project on Wednesday to identify and develop talented footballers. Well, that is all we have for you in this edition of QTV News. Do join us at 10 for another bulletin. Thanks for watching and have a great evening.